Joining us tonight, Tom Homan, former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Fox Business contributor, and great American. Tom, great to have you with us, and your reaction to the reports that Mexico thinks that it's done quite enough and just wants to talk about what all it's currently doing, even as the number of apprehensions last month rose to 136,000, a 13-year high for the month of May.
You know, I saw the press release that the government of Mexico did about how many people they've removed and the action they've taken, and they basically addressed about 10% of the problem. Actually, that's the actual number. About 1 in 10 of the illegal aliens that transit to Mexico, they did something about. So, look, they're not impressive numbers. They have not done anything at an extended pace. They need to do, we talked about this many times, they need to attract the cartels that are managing this operation. They need to defend their southern border. They need to expand the migration protection protocol. They haven't done squat. And they need to, and I know they're here talking, they're talking. I want to see actions. I want to see them doing something. Enough talk. Let's see what you're going to do.
Yeah, the foreign minister looked like a fellow who thought he was just too cute to be in the company of U.S. officials, blathering along, talking nonsense. And while people are dying every day, 70,000 people in this country die of drug overdoses, opiate drug overdoses. We are at a point where the Senate, undercutting this president and the Chamber of Commerce, the biggest business lobby in the country, telling the president they're going to sue him to stop him from securing that border. We are watching the Republican Party itself betray this president because they know damn well that those tariffs will work against Mexico and the punishment will be quick and their consequences that they'll have to suffer will be intense. Your thoughts?
I agree 100%. I think it's disgusting that the Republican senators want to cut the president off at the knees. Are they paying attention to the border, what's happening? What price are they going to put on national security, public safety, and our sovereignty? You know, and stop worrying about the lobbyists and the big companies. Let's start worrying about American people and protecting our border. One thing we're not talking about, and I know they know this, but let me say it again. With the numbers out today, the Border Patrol, 40 to 60% of Border Patrol agents are not on the line. There are holes on that border. If you're in the world and you want to do harm to this country, if you're a terrorist who wants to come to the United States and do us harm, you're going to enter the country the same way 12 to 20 million people have done it. You're not going to buy an airline ticket. There's not too many background checks. You're not going to try to get a visa. There are a lot of checks after 9/11 on that. You're going to use the same route the 12 to 20 million illegal aliens use. And right now, the border is porous, it's open, it's not controlled. The Border Patrol said itself today, 40 to 60% of Border Patrol agents are not on the line. This is a national security crisis, and God help us if we don't step up and do something quickly, because these Republican senators and the Democratic Party are going to find themselves on the wrong side of history if something terrible happens to this country.
You know, when I watch Cornyn and Grassley and the whole bunch of the Republican leadership, do we have this picture of the Republican leadership in the Senate? I would just like to show this audience these folks who pretend they are leaders, taking responsibility to the people who put them in Washington, D.C. Again, do we have that picture available? If not, there they are. Quite a jovial bunch. Joni Ernst, Roy Blunt, right to your right to left there, McConnell in the middle, John Barrasso, John Thune in the back. These people are the ones selling out this president, and I want every American to see just who it is that is trying to commit. First of all, they're committing political suicide because they are refusing to support this president. They didn't pay much attention to what happened in the November midterms last year. Everyone who did not support this president lost their seat. That's why the Democrats are in control. It's going to happen again. And to see these people stand up and question the president, these are the geniuses who got us in this mess, Tom. These are the same people who push these nonsense Chamber of Commerce, open borders, illegal immigration, by any number is just fine. It's their policies that have followed, and they question the president. It's outrageous.
No, I agree with you. And no, it's not like the Democrat Party isn't doing enough harm to this country.
Right.
Now we got a few Republicans jumping on the bandwagon. But you know, if you talk about the Democratic Party, I thought about this on the way to the show tonight. There's a couple of things the American people need to understand that Democratic leadership is not doing. They are not addressing the border. They're passing an amnesty plan right now for 2.5 illegal aliens who enter this country legally. So they're rewarding criminal behavior, and they're doing that rather than talking about closing loopholes on the border. It's more important to them to give a reward program to 2.5 million people than to stop the deaths and the rapes and what's going on our border and trying to secure the border. I almost think they're intentionally trying to create chaos on the borders and embarrass this president. They added language to the FY19 appropriations bill that say we can't take action on parents that smuggle their children, and I said more children will come. Children all-time high. They didn't fund ICE for more family detention beds. I said more families would come. They came. And now they're passing an amnesty plan. That's the last thing they knew. They just threw gas on the fire because that's going to entice more people to come. They all started coming after the DACA, which was a Democratic proposal. In FY13, after DACA passed in 12, all of a sudden families started coming. Okay, we want to be the next DACA recipients. It's just crazy what they're doing. They're not that stupid. They have to know what they're doing. So there's a manufactured crisis. They're manufacturing it to embarrass this president 2020 and say he failed on his #1 promise.
It is disgusting what we are watching.
It's sickening.
It is terrible. And I've got to say, DHS right now is not responding any better under an acting secretary than it was responding under the previous, now departed secretary of DHS. I hope that changes very soon. Tom Homan, you inspire us all. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
And thanks for telling the truth to the American people. It'll keep it up.